Hello everybody. Welcome to my recorded tasting of 10 wines of the BLAUFRÄNKISCH FRANKOVKA grape variety. I'm quite familiar with BLAUFRÄNKISCH FRANKOVKA, with the variety. I will call it BLAUFRÄNKISCH for the moment. Having been a regular visitor of the Austrian wine scene for 30 years now, but also having encountered this variety in Hungary, in the Württemberg area in Germany, and of course in Slovakia, and I've always been a really big fan. It's one of the best and most interesting red grape varieties of Central Europe. I'm going to taste 10 wines now, 5 from Slovakia to start with. So I'm tasting from this wonderful red wine glass from RONA, a Slovak producer of high quality glassware. And I must say, of course, I already pre-tasted all the wines and they all show wonderfully well in this glass. I mean, it's from an aesthetical point of view, it's very well done. It's a big glass, and yet it shows elegance and finesse, and at the same time, it makes the wines open up very well in the glass. So yes, it's actually it has become one of my favorite glasses recently. Now let's start with wine number 1, which is, as I said, the first wines are all from Slovakia. So it's from the Linea family winery. And let's have a look at this wine. It's got a sort of medium deep color, nicely expressive nose. You do sense some oak, but it's really on the background, and actually this wine has aged for over a year on 1500 liter barrels. So they deliberately have chosen not to overdo it with the oak, which is something I would appreciate, and certainly with a lighter and fresher wine as this wine actually is. It's from the 2016 vintage. It shows a bit of tannin. It's not an overly tannic wine. It shows a bit of tannin. What is quite present in the wine is a very lively, quite energetic acidity, providing the wine backbone, maybe even more than the tannins. So the tannins are more supportive, and the acidity is quite important. There is a good fruit concentration. It's a bit of red and a bit of black fruit. The red fruit for me is more like sour cherry and pomegranate, for example. In the black fruit you would find some black cherries. It's not the sweet kind of fruit. It's more the sort of very fresh, early picked fruit that you taste in the wine. Again, that impression is strengthened by the acidity of the wine. It's quite a nice length, I would say a medium length. The tannins are on the background, but they support the wine with enough grip to make it tasty, to provide some tension on the palate. It's very well balanced, I would say. So as a starter, as a more fresh and lighter bodied style of BLAUFRÄNKISCH, it's actually showing very, very well. And with a recommended retail price of €8, it is actually providing a lot of quality in that price category. It will beat a lot of competitors. Very nice. Second wine, I'll show the label, Karpatska Perla, and 2015 vintage. So the producer is Karpatska Perla. This wine it seems a bit paler in the color. Not that it really matters actually. Color doesn't say as much about the wine. I have to say, in the nose, the oak is a bit more noticeable now. The wine aged longer than the previous wine, and part of the aging, or part of the wine actually aged in smaller barrels as well. So yes, this is what I would expect. A bit more influence of the oak on the nose, but it's still not an oaky wine, not at all. It's actually quite floral and perfumed, and there is some nice sweet black fruit impression on the background. A bit of blackberry, blueberry even. But it's also a bit floral, as I said, which is actually very attractive. Overall, a wine with a bit more structure than the previous wine. A bit more alcohol actually, we're now at 13.5. A bit bigger in the tannins. Against that, and in balance with that, a very good fruit concentration, and that sort of... but in the fruit you get a combination of, again, the more fresh... The fresh kind of red fruits, a bit of strawberry, raspberry, sour cherry, and at the same time a bit riper black fruit like sweet black cherries and a bit of red plum actually. And again that lovely floral side to it, violets for example, even a bit of roses. There's that sort of light earthy character coming up, which is something I would relate to Blaufränkisch, generally speaking. But again, what is nice about this wine again is a very lively, supportive acidity, and actually the finish is sort of carried by that acidity without losing the fruit. Actually, so you've got quite a long finish. Quite balanced. I feel the saliva coming up here in my cheeks. So it's the wine that you would actually enjoy drinking a few glasses of, because the acidity makes you wanna enjoy more of it. Very well done. Let's go to wine number 3, which is Vino Magula, FRANKOVKA Unplugged. And they're using the word unplugged. It's stated on the front label to indicate that the wine has been made in a very artisan way, low intervention, biodynamically. It's not a natural wine. I don't think that's what is meant with it. But yeah, low intervention. Let's call it like this. Aged for 24 months in small used barrels. It is very, very, very perfumed on the nose actually. There is a sort of a smokiness coming from the smoke from the old barrels, which is something I really enjoy. There is there is a ripe but fresh picked black fruit, and a floral side again. A pleasant vegetal character. There's a sort of which reminds me a bit of green paprika. Something you actually also find quite often in Blaufränkisch, even in the very big and very ripe ones with high alcohol levels. You sometimes get that green paprika, which is nice. It provides a certain freshness to wine. But really a beautiful nose, complex, balanced, and and in a way quite delicate actually. It also reminds me of salty licorice, something that we eat a lot in the Netherlands, so a very familiar smell. I have to say, on the palate, the wine gives exactly what you would expect after smelling it. First of all, quite a high acidity, but balanced by the tannic structure of the wine and the fruit concentration. So where there is a certain sweet fruit on the nose, you do not really get that on the palate. On the palate, the fruit is much fresher, so you are going back a bit to this to these sensations of cranberries, pomegranate, sour cherries, not too ripe black cherries. There is again a floral side to it. The bell pepper, the green peppercorn is coming back again, and then that lovely sort of smoky kind of oak influence, which is in a way rather delicate actually. Very nice. With a long finish, again carried by the acidity, but it is as if this acidity is carrying the fruit to a certain length. Huh? So, despite the fact that this is not a heavy wine, it's not a very concentrated wine, it's not a big tannic wine, it's not a very oaky wine, but despite all that, the wine has a lot of flavor intensity and a surprisingly long finish. It's actually very, very well done. So let's go to the next wine, which is from the Strickhoff winery. (2018) vintage. Wine spent 10 months in smaller barrels. It's a bit closed in the nose actually. It's also a younger wine, so it makes sense. A bit closed in the nose. It's not heavily oaked actually, but you do smell the oak first of all. Some black fruit behind that. On the palate, it's the other way around. On the palate, it's the fruit that dominates, and the oak is much more on the background. So I think it's a matter of time before that nose will actually open. Excellent fruit concentration, well supported by the oak, good quality oak, not at all dominant. Again, a lovely, fresh and refreshing acidity, well balanced with the alcohol, which is not too high anyway. It's only 12.5. So again, it's a wine that is not showing a huge amount of concentration, not in its fruit, not in its oak, not in the alcohol. It's a rather elegant expression of the FRANKOVKA grape. But the quality shows by the finish. It's got a long finish, showing acidity, showing tannins, and showing the fruit of the wine. And actually, again, that kind of floral character is quite important in this wine. The last wine of the Slovak wines. And this is a wine from Martin Pomfy, that's actually the only winery that I have visited of the 5 of which we just tasted the wine. So here I'm a bit prejudiced because I was actually quite impressed by what Martin Pomfy is doing at different levels with different grape varieties in different parts of the country. Now, this wine is completely different from any of the previous wines, because in this wine is deliberately made from overripe grapes, where there is even a bit of botrytis, noble rot, in the grapes. So in this case, we're getting a wine that is and a bit sweet and very high in the alcohol. Let's call it Martin Pomfy's answer to Amarone, based on FRANKOVKA. I'm not sure if he likes the comparison. It's a bit of a joke anyway, but on my side, but still. So what you do smell is that sort of overripeness. Actually, in the nose, it's a bit jammy. It's quite floral. It's a bit perfumed. It's quite aromatic, but it's a bit jammy, and you really smell a bit raisin. You know, the dried grapes, raisins. Of course, there's a bit of a bit higher volatile acidity in the wine, which is something you get in many botrytis-based wines. Take top Sauternes. Quite often you get higher levels of volatile acidity, so that doesn't disturb me in this case. Yeah, there is a bit of sweetness. Actually, it's 14 grams, so it's not really a sweet wine. There is a bit of sweetness. You do notice it. I think I would call it off dry. It's not halfway sweet. It's off dry. There's a bit of sweetness that you notice. 14 grams, and of course that sweetness is getting more power because of the high alcohol, which is 15%, probably a bit more. But interestingly enough, that alcohol is very well integrated in the wine. You do not really notice it. The wine doesn't burn. It's not too hot. No, for that I have to say that part of it is very well done. Very expressive wine, very good complexity. There is a clear oak presence in the wine, but actually I think that this is very important. In a way, I feel it's the most oaky wine of the five, but without that, the wine might end up being a bit too jammy. So actually, the oak is here balancing out a bit the sugar, the overripe character of the fruit, and the high alcohol. So the oak is playing a very important and positive role in this wine. It's also providing a bit more tannic structure, because with that sort of overripe grape material, you do lose some of the grip of the grape tannin, but that is compensated by oak tannin, which you feel quite well on the top of your tongue. Good finish, so really a very well made wine. I know and I'm sure that not everybody likes this kind of wine. It is very atypical. It is different. Nobody is used to this kind of red wine, but it is a good wine. It is very well done. Compliments to Martin for what he achieved with this wine. I'm not sure about the aging potential though. I can imagine that there is a risk of oxidation on the midterm already. So you may have to be a bit careful with keeping this wine. But it's very interesting. It's very well done. So that's it for this this very interesting range of Slovak impressions of the FRANKOVKA grape. Now on to Burgenland. So let's go for the second range of wines, this time from Burgenland, Austria. And the first wine we're going to taste is from Pavel Král, who is actually Slovak, and a good friend of mine. And since a few years, wine producer in Burgenland. Actually, he recently built his own small wine cellar in the village of Roest. So we're going to taste his BLAUFRÄNKISCH first, which is a 2018 vintage. No oak, and clearly meant as a lighter, more accessible style of BLAUFRÄNKISCH in the context of many Burgenland BLAUFRÄNKISCH wines. So fruit-driven, clean fruit-driven nose. The wine is bottled under screw cap, which I appreciate. So fruit-driven, a bit floral. You get some clear black fruits, a bit of bramble, slightly floral, a bit violet. Compared to the previous wines from Slovakia, it has a slightly lower acidity, and for that it shows a bit riper fruit. So in this context of a lighter styled wine, you do get some sweet fruit sensations. The wine is not sweet, it's dry of course, but some sweet fruit sensations. There is this hint of licorice. A bit of that green paprika that I already mentioned before. Lightly tannic, good finish, so a nice sort of a mid-weight interpretation of BLAUFRÄNKISCH from Burgenland, without oak, ready to drink now, and lots of pleasure for early drinking. Wine number 2 is from rather unknown DAC, Rosalia, which is Burgenland, and it's around the Rosalia mountains, so to say. This wine is from the producer Fischer, and a big change compared to the previous wine. Much deeper in color actually, so obviously a wine made with different intentions, so to say. Spent 18 months in new French oak, and indeed the nose is at this stage, it's a young wine of course, still 2017 vintage, but it's still a young wine in its development, and the nose is first of all dominated by oak. I have to say it's quite high quality oak, but at this stage of the wine it suppresses a little bit the fruit expression on the nose. You do smell some ripe black fruits, like plum for example. And it's again a bit floral, that sort of that smell of violets which is coming back again. A full-bodied wine, high in the alcohol, 14% actually. Tannic. Tannins from the skins of the grapes as well as oak tannins. It's got both of it, so you feel the tannins from the grape here in your cheeks. You feel the oak quite well on your tongue. Heavily oaked, but it's not too oaky. I have to say that there is a lot of fruit concentration in the wine. You really get that black cherry, black plum sensation. But in this stage of the development of the wine, the oak is still very present. I don't know how it will work on the long run. It might be that the wine is just a little bit too oaky, and 18 months in new French oak, that is something that you would regularly find on the top chateaus in France, in Bordeaux. and I'm not quite sure if this wine can really handle this for the longer run. So I will give it the benefit of the doubt. It's a very well-made wine, and the oak that has been used is of very good quality. But there is a risk that that the oak at the end of the day will prove to be a bit too much for the wine. Number 3 is taking us to Südburgenland, Eisenberg. Well, it's actually, I'm not sure. Yes, it's Eisenberg. And it's from a rather well-known producer, Jalic. And I think Eisenberg is just great. It's a very interesting part of the Austrian wine scene. It's a sort of a hidden corner. It's far away from anything. You're almost in Hungary, and you're driving through the woods, and all of a sudden you see that wonderful hillside planted with vines, beautiful exposure, and producers like Jalic tend to make wonderful BLAUFRÄNKISCH wines here, usually showing a lot of minerality, a sort of a saltiness in the finish. Now, the nose is as I would expect, is very expressive. There is oak influence, definitely, but this wine has not been put in new oak. It has been used, it's all used oak, and some of the barrels are also a bit larger, 500 liter barrels. So you do get that sort of smoky cedar wood influence of the oak. But there is also a lot of BLAUFRÄNKISCH expression in that wine. So you do get like just ripe black fruits, black cherries. You do get a sort of licorice aroma. You get a floral side to it, and there is indeed that green paprika, the bell pepper, that is also present on the nose. Quite expressive, actually. A well-structured wine with firm tannins, ripe but firm, grippy. You do get some oak tannins. You feel them right here on your gums here. You feel it a bit on your tongue. So the oak is definitely noticeable and present, but it's not overwhelming, and it's not too dominant compared to the fruit concentration of the wine. So, like in the nose, we get that sort of freshly picked, just ripe black fruit sensation. There is a saltiness, minerality, sort of a whetstone character to the wine. The green paprika is coming back again, and actually the wine has a beautiful long finish. You do sense the alcohol a bit. It's 13.5 actually, but probably a bit more, but sort of well integrated, not dominant, but you do sense it. Very well made, very well balanced, and a wine that, although it's 2017 vintage, a wine that still has a number of years of aging potential ahead of it. Wonderful. Next wine, coming from Leiterberg, which is another very interesting area for BLAUFRÄNKISCH, and on that limestone and gneiss soil of Leiterberg, the good BLAUFRÄNKISCH wines tend to show again that sort of minerality, that sort of freshness, despite being made of really ripe grapes in a good case. So from this producer, Linea, we have a 2017 Ried Poschen, so the Poschen vineyard. The wine is not yet on the market. Spent 20 months in 500 liter barrels and also in barriques, 225 liter barrels. Not tremendously oaky on the nose. There is the oak is absolutely noticeable, but and the wine is still a bit closed. But you do sense the fruit concentration. You do sense that with time the wine will open up further. This is actually I'm not sure actually if this is a barrel sample. It could be. Maybe not. Maybe it's bottled already, but not yet marketed. Very well structured, very firm wine. Grippy tannins that sort of you feel them all over your mouth, but they're ripe. They're really giving structure to the wine. There's a good level of acidity in this wine. Actually, I can see it's 6 grams per liter, 6.1 grams per liter, which is quite high. Not too much alcohol, again, 13.5, a bit more. It's got a very good finish, a long finish, and that is in a wine that is actually a bit closed at this stage. I think it is a promise for the future that the finish is giving you. Perfectly ripe fruit. You get that sort of bittersweet sensation of sour cherries, red currants, and at the same time there is a riper, sweeter kind of black fruit on the palate as well. A bit of plum, black cherries. There's that licorice sensation, salty licorice again. The oak showing with cedar wood, smokiness, a light toast. Good complexity, very well balanced, long finish. Lovely wine. Finally, a wine from the Mittelburgenland, from my good friends Bellenschied's family. And so Mittelburgenland is, as you can imagine, in the middle of the Neusiedler See area and the Südburgenland, so right in between. In the past, this area was producing very rich, sometimes a bit heavy-handed wines, very good wines, but sometimes a bit high in the alcohol, etc. But most producers nowadays, including Bellenschied's, are successfully looking for more elegance in the wine. I don't know, I think it's also a better understanding of the variety than 20 years ago. And the area is meanwhile boasting a number of really, well, some of the best BLAUFRÄNKISCH wines of Austria. So this is the Ried Sonnensteig. So that must be a very well exposed vineyard, as it apparently, well, as it is using, as the name refers to the sunshine on the slope. Very well found balance between the BLAUFRÄNKISCH fruit on the one hand and the oak on the other hand. So oak present but not at all dominant. They used 500 liter barrels here, which is, well, you see everywhere in Europe and also in Burgenland you see much more of these larger barrels nowadays, which of course allows for a more delicate oak expression in wines. So again you get that sort of smoky impression coming from the oak, and at the same time you get that intense black fruit from BLAUFRÄNKISCH. Quite perfumed, quite floral actually. showing freshness. So no overripe fruit here, really perfectly ripe fruit. Clearly the most concentrated wine of the 5, but without any problem of being heavy or too heavy-handed. So I think in this wine it's all about finding the balance between the structure of the wine itself. So the alcohol, which is 13.5, a very good level of acidity, 5.6 grams. Very well defined tannins, perfectly ripe, grippy but perfectly ripe. And on the other hand, the fruit concentration, which is also, you know, there is no overripeness in that fruit nor underripeness. So it's, I think it's all about picking at the right moment. Very important thing. And then as the third factor in the balance of the wine, the oak, which is present. You feel the oak tannin a little bit on your tongue and on your gums. So the oak is present also in the aromas, but without being dominant or in any case overwhelming the wine. So I think in this wine, as concentrated and full-bodied as it is, the balance of the wine is very well found. There is excellent complexity on the nose and the palate. And a very good length. So I must say a very worthy end to this tasting of the beautiful BLAUFRÄNKISCH FRANKOVKA grape variety. So a big thanks to all the producers for sending the bottles and to RONA for providing the excellent glassware. I hope that you all enjoyed this tasting with me. Thank you.